in the flickering half-light of a limestone cave in what will one day be called southern France, a hunter grinds red ochre into a fine powder. It is 35,000 BCE. He mixes the pigment with animal fat and with slow, deliberate strokes shapes the curve of a bison's flank on the rock. The fire crackles beside him. Shadows ripple across the walls like living spirits. Smoke rises to the dark ceiling, carrying his breath into the unseen. He pauses. His lips move in a low murmur. Not speech, not song. A plea for the bison to come close, for the hunt to succeed, for his kin to return alive. Yet here there are no temples, no carved gods, no written prayers. He has no word for religion, no doctrine to follow. These marks on stone, this chant in firelight, are as natural to him as water or fire. And yet, in this moment, without knowing it, he is shaping the first stirrings of belief. Tens of thousands of years later, archaeologists will kneel in this same cave, tracing the faded outlines. Was it art, magic, worship, or all three? This man was more than a hunter. He was an artist, a storyteller, perhaps unknowingly a priest of something new. Here, in the silent dark, humanity began a ritual that would echo for millennia, reaching toward the unseen. From this spark grew the vast diversity of myths and sacred traditions we know today, all rooted in one impulse: to make sense of life and death, and to speak to forces beyond our understanding. But what was this first religion? When did it begin? And could we, modern creatures of the written word, ever truly comprehend the beliefs of those who lived tens of thousands of years before the first scriptures? Before the first faint stirrings of belief in Ice Age caves, human ideas about the unseen were tied to the immediate. The hunt, the weather, the turning of the seasons. The dead were buried, sometimes with beads or tools. But were these offerings to another world, or simply care for the body? Then, somewhere in deep prehistory, one mind broke from the ordinary. An elder, his name lost to time, dared to speak the idea that the mountains and rivers themselves were alive, that an unseen world existed alongside the visible one. Whether in a Paleolithic camp or a Neolithic village, such a thought may have seemed dangerous, even foolish. In later millennia, philosophers and priests would clash over similar claims, branding them heresy, just as the Church would one day condemn those who challenged its cosmology. But in those earliest days, no one could know that this spark would ignite the long history of religion. The idea that belief, shared, repeated, woven into ritual, might have begun in a specific place, and time was, to some, unsatisfactory even before the evidence was examined. One respected but controversial anthropologist dismissed early cave paintings and burials as mere superstition, insisting that true religion could only emerge with cities, temples, and priesthoods. The only reason, he argued, that we project religion into deep prehistory is because later sacred texts have trained our minds to see faith everywhere. Yet the first archaeologists to study ancient ritual spaces kept theology and evidence separate. Their conclusions came not from scripture, but from objects unearthed in the ground, objects that told their own quiet stories. Just a few decades ago, on a hillside in southeastern Turkey, researchers uncovered something that would transform our understanding of early religion. Led by German archaeologist Klaus Schmid, the excavation revealed great T-shaped pillars, some carved with foxes, vultures, and snakes. The site, now called Göbekli Tepe, was over 11,000 years old, built before agriculture, before cities. Its scale and artistry suggested a place of gathering, of ceremony, perhaps worship. What Schmidt uncovered was like finding the heartbeat of belief preserved in stone. Each pillar was a signal, each carving a wavelength of faith stretched across millennia. For the first time, archaeologists could see religion not as an abstract idea, but as something that people built with their hands, a sanctuary rising before civilization itself. Göbekli Tepe was not the first sacred site ever found, but its age carried a surprising truth. Organized ritual may have come before organized society. This turned an old theory on its head, that religion was born of civilization. Instead, civilization may have been born of religion. In South Africa's Blombos Cave, beads and engraved ochre, 75,000 years old. In the Levant, Natufian burials with flowers and stone tools, 12,000 years old. In Australia, rock art showing shamanic figures that still speak to the descendants of their makers. These ancient traces are like the cosmic background radiation of faith. Faint, scattered, but undeniable. The residue of moments when human beings first reached beyond the tangible, leaving marks of belief on the fabric of our shared past. Today, the prevailing view among archaeologists is that religion has no single birthplace. It emerged again and again, shaped by environment, survival, and imagination. But the earliest moments, when the first stories were told to the dark, when the first offerings were made to invisible powers, remain shrouded in mystery. And so the great questions linger. What truly was the first religion? Was it one or many? The first models of religion's origin were built in the 19th and early 20th centuries, shaped by the frameworks of anthropology and archaeology of their time. One of the most influential was Edward Burnett Tylor, often called the father of anthropology. He argued that the earliest religion was animism, the belief that spirits lived in trees, rivers, and animals. In his view, all later religions grew out of this root. Many early scholars assumed belief followed a straight line, from primitive superstition to organized faith, just as tools progress from stone to bronze to iron. But when evidence emerged suggesting belief may have begun tens of thousands of years earlier than anyone thought, many researchers grew uneasy. The finds were authentic, the beads, the ochre, the burials, but the interpretation was disputed. The issue wasn't theological, but definitional. If you call these acts religion, you must accept that religion can exist without gods, without temples, without scripture. Some scholars, tracing humanity back through the archaeological record, proposed a primeval belief, a cultural seed containing the potential for all later traditions. We can follow burial rites, symbolic art, and ritual gatherings back toward this seed. But what it looked like, or how it lived in the minds of its practitioners, remains unknown. When all human expression is reduced to fragments in the earth, the rules of interpretation become fragile. We can chart the evolution of belief in documented societies through written records, oral histories, and ethnographic study. Beyond that lies a different world, one of early humans whose languages are lost, whose stories were spoken only in firelight, where our familiar categories break down. How small could religion be in its beginnings? Could it be nothing more than a gesture toward the dead? A carved animal on a wall? A handful of seeds left at the mouth of a cave? And what made these acts repeat and spread? For much of the 20th century, one theory dominated. Religion began as ancestor veneration, the belief that the spirits of the dead watch over the living. Like the pull of unseen gravity, the presence of the dead may have drawn the living into ritual, invisible, yet shaping the behavior of all who felt its weight. But if this were the sole origin, we would expect elaborate burials from the very start and far more consistent symbols. Instead, the record is uneven, pockets of intense ritual separated by long gaps of silence. These are like signals across deep time, sometimes bright and clear, sometimes vanishing into the static. Another possibility is the symbolic explosion, a period between 50,000 and 40,000 years ago when human symbolic activity surged worldwide. Cave art, decorated tools, musical instruments, ceremonial objects appearing across continents in what feels like an instant. Instead of a slow evolution, it was a spark catching in dry grass, spreading fast, doubling in intensity, transforming small groups into cultures bound by shared stories. This surge may have been enough to create the first proto-religions. We do not know why it began. Was it a genetic shift in the brain, environmental pressures, or pure accident? The archaeological record shows us only the last fraction of this burst, the most recent beads, the best preserved carvings. How long did it last? Could it have begun with a single, definable first religion? Logic says no. The evidence shrinks in fragments, half a tradition here, a quarter of a ritual there, until it becomes vanishingly small but never disappears entirely. And so the trail of belief grows fainter the further back we look, until it dissolves into silence. From an anthropological standpoint, a singular first religion may be an impossibility. We lack the tools to see further back. The origins of belief extend into the fog of prehistory, beyond written record, into speculation. The first religion may not be the beginning of belief at all, but rather the first point where its traces are clear enough for us to see. Not a true starting line, but a page partway into the book of human culture, the first paragraph that makes any real sense. And yet, if we stretch our minds to the edges of what archaeology, anthropology, and cognitive science can imagine, perhaps one day we will find a way to peer through that fog. By the early 2010s, as discoveries at Göbekli Tepe began to capture worldwide attention, archaeologists, anthropologists, and historians gathered in Turkey and beyond to debate what this ancient site revealed about the origins of belief. For centuries, the study of prehistoric religion had been dismissed as speculation, but Göbekli Tepe, with its great T-shaped pillars carved with foxes, vultures, and snakes, forced scholars from many fields to take the question seriously. If ritual monuments this vast were built before agriculture, then perhaps religion was not the product of civilization, but its foundation. Amid these debates, some cognitive scientists put forward a radical idea that early religion was not a single invention, but a feature of the human mind, a set of patterns and tendencies that emerged again and again, no matter the time or place. The first religions, they suggested, may not have had gods at all. Instead, they could have been ways of interacting with the world. Rituals, songs, offerings, rooted in the brain's ability to imagine invisible agents. As one scholar put it, asking what came before religion is like asking what lies north of the North Pole. The question itself may be meaningless because belief was never added to the human mind. It was there from the beginning. The proposal startled many. The analogy was simple enough to grasp, but applying it to the whole sweep of human history was something else entirely. We can't help but reach for answers to questions that may not be answerable. Who first believed? Was there a moment of invention? And if not, why do we feel the need to search for one? Archaeology cannot give us these answers with certainty. The deep past offers no direct testimony, only traces in bones, pigments, and stones. Just as time is a fundamental property of the universe, belief may be a fundamental property of the human condition, existing wherever humans exist. There is no outside of it, only variation. These fragments are like faint signals carried across the void, sometimes clear, sometimes fading into silence, visible only when the conditions are just right. Something so deeply woven into our nature is difficult to picture in its earliest form, let alone prove. And yet, even in the face of the unknowable, scholars are not content to stop at "we can't know." They continue to speculate, drawing on obscure artifacts, rare cultural survivals, and fragments of myth to form theories that might, just might, open a pinhole of light into the darkness of the past. For a fleeting moment in that narrow beam, we glimpse the outlines of the first believers. And then, just as quickly, the view closes again. One of the most popular pieces of speculation in the study of religion's origins is the multiple emergence model, the idea that belief is eternal in human history, not starting in one place and time, but appearing independently in many different groups. Like an endlessly retold story, spiritual traditions rise, change, and sometimes vanish, only to reappear elsewhere in new forms. This idea has existed in anthropology for more than a century, but only in the last few decades have researchers begun to see how it might be possible. In the earliest stages of human society, small scattered groups lived so far apart they could not share culture directly. Yet, archaeological evidence shows ritual behavior emerged in many of them. The strange properties of the human mind, its capacity for imagination, pattern-seeking, and social bonding, meant that religion could tunnel into existence over and over, each time in its own way, each time arriving almost fully formed. In 2014, a group of cognitive scientists presented another radical framework, the cultural cycle model. It rests on the idea that religion's form depends not on time, but on scale. Small mobile bands tend toward animism, the belief that spirits inhabit animals, trees, and rivers. Larger, more settled communities develop ancestor worship, complex pantheons, or moralizing gods. The size of the society changes the shape of belief, but the basic rules remain the same. According to this model, the end of one type of religion naturally seeds the beginning of another. A tiny, intimate animist tradition can grow into an elaborate temple-based faith. A sprawling, organized religion can fragment into smaller, local spiritualities The same mental architecture supports both, different in scale, but equivalent in structure. But there is an even stranger idea, with its roots in evolutionary psychology. In 1995, a team of researchers proposed the social brain hypothesis of religion. They argued that human survival depended on cooperation within groups far larger than those of other primates. To maintain those groups, the brain evolved mechanisms for trust, shared identity, and the punishment of cheaters. Religion, in this view, was not invented. It emerged naturally from those mechanisms as fundamental to our species as language. Here, the layers of religion are not physical, but cognitive. Moral codes, supernatural agents, sacred narratives, ritual practices, social hierarchies. Our lived experience of religion is just one visible slice of a much larger mental framework. The rest hidden deep in evolutionary history, beyond our ability to directly observe. This is a bold theory, sometimes nicknamed the cognitive frame model, because it suggests that religion is the lens through which humans make sense of community, morality, and the unseen. For now, we have no way to fully map these deep cognitive structures. They remain speculative, but compelling. The multiple emergence, cultural cycle, and cognitive frame models all sit at the edge of research on religion origins. Like all good theories, they try to make predictions we can test. Patterns in the archaeological record, similarities in myths, common ritual structures across isolated cultures. But so far, no evidence has emerged that can point us definitively to the first religion. Our understanding of early belief rests, like a house of cards, on our understanding of human cognition, archaeology, and anthropology, fields that continue to evolve. The true nature of the first religion and its meaning for humanity may always lie beyond the grasp of our storytelling minds, or perhaps a new discovery tomorrow or 1,000 years from now will turn everything on its head. From that hunter's whispered prayer in firelight to the towering stones of Göbekli Tepe, humanity has always asked the same question: who or what was listening back? You've been watching The History of Religion. If you enjoyed this journey into humanity's oldest questions, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments.